Hello, my horror-loving dudes. I'm KillJoy Jake, and today we're going to be ranking all 5 of the Insidious movies. So let's get right on into the ranking of all of our favorite dream demons.
Well, sometimes that is better.
Now, before I get into the ranking, obviously this is just my opinion. Yours will most likely differ, so leave me something about your ranking in the comments of this video. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. That would be pretty cool. Coming in 5th place, last but not least, is Insidious The Red Door, a film filled with well-executed jump scares and great character moments, but also a lot of missed opportunities and plot points that will have you scratching your head. I loved the jump scares in this movie. I thought the MRI machine scare was really well set up and completely different from what we saw in the trailer, so I was really happy to see that not be exactly the same thing as what every Blumhouse movie does these days. They'll just show you the jump scare in the trailer, and then when it hits in the movie, you're just like, yeah, I've seen that. I'm looking at you, Black Phone. And although this was a much more simple jump scare, it oddly hits at a really well-timed moment. Just the hand. When it grabs Dalton's hand and like kind of slices him up a little bit, he gets blood all over his painting. Ah, jeez. But unfortunately, there are so many plot points of this movie that have me just saying, what the fuck? Why are we focusing on Josh Lambert's dad? I don't care. I care much more about the backstory of the lipstick demon, and we never got anything about that. Why does my man like Tiny Tim so much? Why does he make these creepy ass dolls? And why does he want to get into a body so bad? I want to know. And unfortunately, this movie never gave me an answer. And when it comes to horror movies, I like when things are left a little more ambiguous. Think the ending to the original Insidious. It's a banger. But I would have liked them to at least scratch the surface of that a little bit, give us some kind of insight into who this character was before they became this dream demon. It would have been nice just to have something on the lipstick demon, who he was. Like Parker Crane, the bride in black, a character that I genuinely did not care that much about at all, gets an entire backstory in the sequel. Why couldn't we have done that here for the lipstick demon? I don't know. That would have made this movie worth my time. Unfortunately, Insidious The Red Door has really no reason to exist except to be another entry in this franchise. Although a lot of the other sequels in this franchise are flawed, I never feel like they're doing anything that's just fluff or filler to make the movie longer. Insidious The Red Door, I would say at least 50% of the movie is quite literally that. Everything at the frat house was completely unnecessary to the plot, and I genuinely don't know why it was in the film. I wish we could have done something with that. There was a lot of cool ideas introduced here, especially with the idea that maybe someone partied too hard at this frat house and then died in the process, and now they're haunting this house. That's really cool. That's a great idea, but go somewhere with it. I feel like the only reason they put this scene in the movie is so we can have a ghost throw up on Dalton, which is really cool, don't get me wrong, but why was it here? While the writing is heavily flawed in this film, I thought the direction from Patrick Wilson was fantastic. Every returning cast member was really great, and I loved the new characters too. Chris Winslow, played by Sinclair Daniel, for instance, is a huge standout, probably one of my favorite Insidious side characters across all 5 movies. I felt so much passion in this film, but unfortunately they were working with a script that just had no care or any connection to the past movies besides having characters from the past movies. That's where it starts and ends, unfortunately. There was so much potential here to do something special in this finale, but unfortunately that opportunity was heavily missed. Coming in 4th place is also the 4th film in this franchise, Insidious The Last Key. This is truly a misunderstood and underrated prequel sequel. There's not too many of those, but when they do come out, they're usually not great. I'm not crazy about prequels to begin with. I don't think they usually add too much to the story, but sometimes they do, like in Insidious The Last Key. Elise's backstory is something that was super necessary and adds a whole lot to the story to know where she came from and how that affects her today, and it set up something huge with the key face demon, who is also definitely my second favorite right behind old Lippy Boy. But I hate to go back to the previous movie for a second here, but Insidious The Last Key set up the next film in the franchise to do something really special with the key face demon who's got all these keys on his hands, and instead what they do at the end of Insidious The Red Door is not go after the key face demon because he's got all the keys to the red doors. Oh no, they completely forget that that was a detail in a previous film. They decide to instead paint over the doors, which makes no sense. Just like Halloween Kills to Halloween Ends, Insidious The Last Key sets up so much for the next movie, and they decide to do absolutely nothing with it, and it is such a shame. I can't get over that. Insidious The Red Door is probably the only movie in this franchise I dislike. But let's get back to The Last Key. I think there's some excellent jump scares in this movie as well. I think the key face demon jumping out of the box, that scared the ever-loving shit out of me. I did not see that coming. That blew me away. Insidious jump scares are set up so well because they'll take just a little longer with the setup so you don't expect them. This is a great example of that though, because you have Elise searching through all of these boxes very slowly as the camera pushes in on her and to see what she's doing. So you get the sense that something's approaching. And they just keep doing that past the point of when a natural scare would come so that it builds the tension for even longer. So when the scare finally does come, it hits even harder. Insidious does that so well. That's why I put these leagues above the Conjuring films. The side characters in this movie are questionable. I think Elise's family, like in the backstory stuff, like that was pretty good. Those are pretty good characters, really well executed, really well directed. But then we get to the flash forward where we meet her brother again, and he's an older man now, opposed to the child that we met at first. I just don't like the entire scene at the diner. It feels so awkward. Everything about that sequence just did not come out the way I think it was intended to. And this scene is introducing Elise's nieces, which sounds like a hair metal band from the 80s, and also reintroduces her brother's character. And I just don't like any of them. I don't think any of these people are bad at acting. I just think there was some weird direction here in this sequence. It just feels very awkward and tense where maybe it shouldn't. For example, in that diner scene, you have Elise just kind of walk up to the girls and she's just staring at them and like doesn't say anything. And then the girls like feel her presence and they're kind of just like, hi. It's so awkward and weird to me. I don't know. I don't know what they were going for in that scene, but the whole thing is just bizarre. Even when like they drive away, you have Elise coming out of the diner going like, hey, stop. Don't do that. It's not just the performances either. It's like the staging, where characters are. It wouldn't make sense for this character to do this in that situation. I don't know. There's a lot of that in Insidious The Last Key that really bogs it down, unfortunately. There's also a lot of uneven pacing in this movie. Like we spend a good like 30, 40 minutes on this subplot about this guy keeping a girl in his basement. And like, it's cool, I guess. You get this sequence where Specs kills the guy and then he feels absolutely no remorse about it, which is kind of funny, honestly. But it's just a weird thing to add into the movie. It doesn't feel like filler where the Red Door feels like filler because it does affect the plot big time, but I don't think we needed to spend that much time on it. It slows the movie down a little bit in the middle, but the third act is ferocious and awesome. Maybe one of the best third acts of the entire series, which mostly takes place in a ghost prison. You thought prison was cool. Well, ghost prison is way cooler. I love all of the creepy entities in this third act. I see a constant complaint about this franchise that a lot of the demons and ghosts aren't very scary, like they're always just people dressed in old clothing. In Insidious The Last Key, we get a bunch of super memorable demons in this ending sequence. There's this one character who's like bald and has these like tiny eyes, and I don't know why, but that one scares the out of me. I really like that demon. And Keyface is also, without a doubt, one of my favorite sequel demons besides the lipstick demon, of course. I said demon a lot there, didn't I? I should start saying dreamins because that's what they are. Dream demons. My favorite kind of demon. But moving on to Chapter 2, which is taking home the bronze medal. Although this is one of the weirder movies in the entire franchise, it finds a way to be original and creative again with the way that the plot is structured. It's very different from the first movie. I love that we have Patrick Wilson basically going full-on slasher villain in this movie because he's possessed by the demon from the last movie that took over his body. If I just spoiled that for you, you did that to yourself. I love the third act of this movie with Patrick Wilson trying to mash his family into little bits with a hammer. I am always down for that. It feels very The Shining, but I'm kind of into that. If it wasn't for Patrick Wilson's performance either, I don't know if this would work all that well, but it does because it's old Patty Wills. Rose Byrne really shines in this movie. I think maybe even more so than the first one. Renee Lambert is a much more interesting character in this one, dealing with the aftermath of the last movie and starting to realize something's wrong with her husband. Her and Dalton are probably my two favorite characters in this one, besides Patrick Wilson, of course, who's amazing in literally everything he's in, even if it's Moonfall, a movie that absolutely sucks, but Patrick Wilson, he's in it. The big thing about Insidious Chapter 2 that I'm not crazy about, like, Parker Crane's backstory is like a tad bit distasteful, in my opinion. Parker Crane's backstory is essentially his mom wanted him to be a girl, and well, he's not a girl and he didn't want to be a girl, but she forces him to dress in girls' clothing, and that leads into his adult life, having mental instability and dressing up as the bride in black, killing people. I'm just not crazy about that because unfortunately we live in a world where we villainize transgender people for absolutely no reason. It's bullshit. It really makes me mad. And although that was definitely not the purpose of this movie, I just don't like the idea of villainizing any character that has to go through something along those lines. Because, you know, the media already does that for some reason. reason. So let's just not do that in movies. That would be pretty cool. I also wish Chapter 2 would have focused a little more on the Lipstick Demon's backstory. The finale structure characters in this film are kick-ass. I'm just not crazy about the villain in this one. Taking home the silver medal is going to be Chapter 3. Maybe the scariest entry of the entire Insidious franchise, Insidious Chapter 3 has a lot of great things going on, even if a lot of the side characters suck. Like, all of the jump scares in this movie, I think, are a consistent 9 out of 10. And you can't say that about a lot of the other movies in this franchise. The Conjuring, Sinister, they're all very up and down. Right from the get-go, we get this sequence where you see something waving at Quinn in the background, and then it's gone, and you're like, what's going on there? That's really creepy. Then later on, after Quinn's audition, she sees the same man in the street waving to her like this as a car comes out of f***ing nowhere and plows her over. I remember the first time I saw Insidious Chapter 3, that blew my f***ing mind. I was like, no way, dude, holy shit. And watching that scene again, you can just barely see the light from the car in the background, but it's not moving that fast. It's kind of just like doing this, and then bam! Oh! That's so scary and it's so real. Like, that's something that can really happen to you, not a demon in your dream trying to possess your body. This is a car just hitting you in the street. That's scary, man. I also think the window jump scare with the way it's shot and how it's executed is maybe my second favorite jump scare in the entire franchise. That made me shit my pants the first time. With all of that being said, Insidious Chapter 3 easily has the weakest characters of the entire franchise, like without argument. We have girl with pink hair, little brother character whose name I can't remember because it's such a forgettable character, love interest boy, and an old couple who also lives in the building. I don't care about any of these characters. I don't think any of them are set up well or they do anything interesting throughout the runtime of this one. It really is a shame because I think Dermot Mulroney is the father character and Quinn, they're both very good characters. Like, okay, I'm invested. They're not like, oh my god, my favorite characters of all time in anything, but I think they're interesting enough to follow them the whole movie. After that sequence where Quinn gets hit by the car, we spend a lot of time with these characters. It's honestly almost a movie killer if there wasn't so many jump scares interlaid throughout that time period. I almost would have turned it off. It's not even that they're bad, they're just not interesting. They're just typical archetype characters that you see in like every style of movie that's exactly like this. I wish we could have done something a little more interesting here. It's also great to see Elise, Specs, and Tucker back in this one, where Elise is mostly absent from Chapter 2 besides a little cameo appearance at the end where she beats the f*** out of the Bride in Black in a literal fist fight, which is hilarious. But we get to see her do her thing that she did in the first movie here, and that really saves the back half of this one. The Man Who Can't Breathe is a really excellent and scary villain too, mostly due to those jump scares. The design is a little simplistic, but I still dig it. And of course, coming in first place is Insidious Chapter 1. That's not even the full title, it's just Insidious. I have a habit of putting the original film in first place for ranking videos, but this is one where it is truly deserved. I enjoy the Insidious sequels. They're good, but the first one is a 10 out of 10 and none of the other ones even come close to that. This movie is a masterclass in building suspense because it starts off at 0. There's no opening jump scare, nothing crazy happening at the beginning. It's just a family living their life in a house. It's simple, it feels real, it's relatable, and then it builds to 100 by the end of the movie where we're in another dimension fighting ghosts. That's why this movie works so well, because it is paced perfectly. I mean, I wouldn't change a goddamn thing about where the scares start to come in and how they increasingly get more scary as the movie goes along. It's an excellent build from 0 to 100 that never strays from that path. It is so focused, it knows exactly what it's trying to do, and it executes that so damn well. With all of that being said, there is a major plot hole that many people like to point out. How the f is a teacher affording 2 houses within the span of a year? Okay, look, you got me, but when a movie is so good at something else, I can excuse plot holes. Like, take Halloween Ends, for instance. There are multiple plot holes and things that I really don't like and don't make any sense considering the previous movies, and I'm not crazy about it, so I'm gonna point out all the plot holes. But with this movie, I really enjoy it. It does something that is so masterful and so interesting. I just don't feel that way about Halloween Ends at all. You really took Allison, a badass final girl, and you just made her a boring love interest who's gonna do anything for this greasy idiot? Okay, that sucks. I can excuse this little plot hole in Insidious because frankly it doesn't bother me as much as something like Halloween Ends. It's a little thing that doesn't make sense. Who gives a I can excuse little tiny things like this that you may miss in your first watch, opposed to something like Halloween Ends that has multiple weird things going on that make no goddamn sense. If it's issues with the pacing, the editing, Corey Cunningham randomly coming into the story for no goddamn reason. Very, very, very different situations there. I also think this movie birthed the horror icon, man. I love the lipstick demon. I love horror movies where you deal with an inescapable problem that is almost borderline ridiculous, and the lipstick demon is the epitome of that. Like, this family is just going about their day, they're chilling out, and then all of a sudden, one night, their son's soul floats off into another dimension and is being kept in a cage by a demon. That is so ridiculously tragic, it's almost a little funny. I think that's why I have such a magnetism to movies like Insidious or Nightmare on Elm Street, where it's something so unbelievably out of your control that maybe someone else has never experienced before. Horrors beyond man's comprehension, essentially. Like, sure, you can get that from something like Sinister, which is basically just Scott Derrickson's version of Insidious. Still really good though if you haven't seen it. But then there's the Conjuring universe, which, don't get me wrong, I still really enjoy. It's a fun franchise, but it's essentially just the modernized version of the Amityville horror. Something like Insidious will take that concept a step farther in a new direction. Like, religion isn't really a huge factor in the Insidious franchise at all, where it's the entire thing in The Conjuring. I like that these demons are from the further and not hell. It's not just a brimstone and fire and we're walking around that. Now, okay, look, we've done that a million times in so many movies. Insidious invents a whole new like realm or purgatory to f around with, and I think that's really interesting. I give movies like Insidious and Sinister so much more props for the creativity versus something like The Conjuring, which, like I said, it's not bad, it's just middle of the road. It's nothing really new or original, it's just modernized. There is a difference. This is just my ranking of the franchise though. How would you rank them? Leave me something about it in the comments below. Thank you all so much for watching my Insidious franchise ranking video. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more horror content in the future. Please consider supporting me on Patreon, especially if you want to be a co-host on my podcast. The link for that is in the description below, and as always, don't forget to kill it out there, y'all.